welcome, and these are the Techy updates. Let's just give it a second to load up. For November 2023. Will soon be 2024, so there'll be another update, I'm sure, at some point, but probably in the new year. So updates are as follows. This is just a reminder one about digital whiteboarding for Workspace. Obviously, Jamboard and app, as we've said previously, end of life, December next year. Figma, obviously, there's third-party now integration for meets and things like that. And Figma have also released their import tools, so you can actually, if you've got any existing Jamboard jams on your account, then you can actually import them now into Figma so that you don't lose them, which is a good thing. I'm not going to play that. The next
sorry, James, can I just jump in there very quickly? The important thing about the Figma import is you don't lose any of the functionality. All your post-it notes and all the drawings apparently are exactly the same.
Yeah, exactly. So
the first one is a good one. The others will certainly produce them, but they were the first to market, so chance to start to have a review of the alternatives to Jamboard if you use Jamboards.
Yeah. So this next one is a lot of these updates from November are. A lot of them are API related. So if you're actively using the Google APIs, you will find this very useful. So this is sort of like, this one is to do with Google Meet in particular, and it's available now in developer preview. So it's not like a full-blown thing. It's all what we used to call a beta. So it allows you to use the API to actually do all the things that it says on the screen there, configure and program meets, retrieve information about past meets, meeting times and attendees, all this kind of thing. So if you're using the APIs, a really useful functionality. Next one, obviously, is we know Google are rolling out smart chips across most of their platforms now. This one is AppSheet Smart Chips for Google Docs, where you'll be able to sort of like pull in information. And again, the caveat here is you need an AppSheet license in order to do this. So you can access data. So for the example it shows here, is it just shows, you know, if someone's kind of like creating a doc about IT inventory, for example, then you can pull in data to look at who's requested what inventory wise, and then you can either approve it or not approve it. And you can also trigger automations on that document as well. So if you're, you know, an IT manager, that's a really useful tool, because, you know, if someone's requested, I don't know, a replacement mouse or keyboard or whatever, then you'll be able to see it within the one document.
Just a quick question on that, James.
Yeah.
What's the license? Is that just to activate? It's not a paid-for license, is it?
It's AppSheet's license. Whether there's a cost, Chris, are you able to say whether there's a cost on the AppSheet's license?
I think there is. It's not a very big cost. I can certainly look at that for you, Andy. Yeah, there's a basic sort of core version, isn't there, Steve? And then there's
free version in
there's
like Education Plus, but then there's that's like a freemium, and then we can get some costings, Andy, if you're wanting to level it up and explore. We've got just a handful of customers that are on the paid versions for some stuff, but people use it for like announcements and simple non-code announcement settings and platforms for students. Beyond Google Classroom, you know, those bits where you go, I want to communicate trips and do this and do this. I've seen some good examples of that in education, but yeah, it is developing, and there is a cost potential to it, but we'll share that across. And just bear in mind on AppSheet, the challenge is for organizations, and we've fed it back to Google, is it's not about the person, it's not a license for the person creating, you need to assign a license for anybody that needs to access that information. So for example, if you're wanting to create something that hits 50 of your staff, you'll need to assign 50 licenses rather than just the one of the person creating it, as far as I'm aware. So just bear that in mind, Andy, for any project, and cost that in when we provide the information. Okay.
Yeah, we'll do. There's a few add-ins and things that I use for things like mail merge, which use that.
Yeah. Are you using the mail merge tool from Gmail?
No, I use it in Docs.
Right. Okay. Right. Okay. I know that a lot of organisations are using they use mail merge. You know, that where it's next to the CC and the BCC, there's like a little person icon, and you can create a mail merge in Gmail.
Yeah, I've seen those.
And I've done that, but obviously that's the simplest form, where the app sheet and the APIs come in after that. But yeah, no worries.
All right. Yeah. Thank you, chaps.
Okay, so this is another API update. So this is to do with creating events and out of office events and things like that. You as an administrator can actually now control the events and control focus times and even auto decline meetings across your domain using the API. It's whether you want to centrally manage your calendars is another thing, but as an admin, you're able to do it. So you're able to kind of like say, okay, all staff are, for example, out of office for the Christmas holiday. So you as an admin can kind of like push out via the API out of office times for your entire staff body. This next one's quite interesting. This is sort of like more Google integrating Apple. So this is if you've got any iOS devices, it will allow you as an admin to basically push out iOS apps using the Apple bulk purchasing program. But you need to have set that up in the first place. But if you have set up the VPP, then you can apply those applications in bulk across your domain to any iOS devices that you've got.
Just on that one, James, before you skip over, we get a lot of organisations. Is there anybody managing any Macs or iOS devices at all? And do you want? And James, a question to you: do you have to purchase the Apple management so it can API and link into the Google integration and the push out of applications through the management store?
Yeah, well, anyone who's managed iOS devices in the past knows that it was an absolute nightmare. But with this integration into the Google Admin Console, obviously you will need to you'll have to pay Apple in order to do that, and then that will push out. You'll be able to do it then directly through your Google Admin Console, which is going to be an awful lot easier than what it used to be.
Yeah, I'd be interested to have a look at that. I use it with Mobile Device Manager, with mobile devices for stuff.
Yep.
And so the separating of those two into a work and a home apps list like it does on Android would be really useful.
Yep.
We currently do you have to generate a token and include that. I'm not aware that we pay for that. I think it's just a generative token every year.
Yep.
I can't really remember whether there's any costs associated with that, but yeah, doing that a little bit more to be able to clearly manage those.
Yeah, I mean, was that
issues flipping between am I in work mode or am I in home mode?
Yeah, I mean, with Android, you obviously you can create the work profiles through the mobile device management, but with iOS now, this is now another way that you can do it. So if someone's got an iPhone, you can create like a work profile, you can create a personal profile. So it's separating their personal information from their work information, which is always a good thing.
Yeah, we don't use iPad. It's just really for BYOD devices where staff log on to their Google apps really with on their personal device using their school Gmail.
Yeah, so it's sort of like on iPhones and things like that.
Yeah.
So this next one, I don't know if anyone's using the Google Meet hardware. Google Meet hardware is expensive. The licenses are quite expensive as well. But these are just, this is just an update for admins to kind of like troubleshoot any issues with it. So you'll be able to look within the admin console as to what, if there is an issue, what the issue is. This one's an important one. This is Google Vault, which is your retention area. This is not, I always say to people, Google Vault is not backup at all. It is data retention. So Google Vault, Google recommend that Google Vault is configured to 18 months. That is what Google as a company have as their data retention policy, is 18 months. And the reason they have 18 months is because they get so many FOI requests and things like that. But this is now just an additional thing that it will now store calendar information based on your retention settings. So you can actually go back and you can look to see who was in a meet, say 6 months ago, on a certain day. So that's a very useful thing to have. And, a very welcome inclusion in the Vault. Those are the main updates I'm going to share with you. There's one other update I do want to share with you, which is, I don't know if anyone has, let me just stop sharing and then reshare. Stop presenting. If I just share again. There's one other thing that has now been applied to the admin console, if anyone's seen it. In this day of sort of like sustainability and things like that, you may get questions about, how much your Google, how much Google is using energy-wise and things like that, and how much carbon it's actually using within your domain. And you can now see that within the reporting section of the domain. So you've now got a carbon footprint for your domain. So if I click on here, it'll ask me to sign in again. It will load up, and like I say, this is brand new, but it will load up and it will give you statistics of, based on the usage of the domain, how much CO2 is actually being produced, what's your carbon footprint basically. And you can look at your monthly carbon footprint and you can break it down, the scope breakdown, and it can be location based. And then over time, it will tell you exactly what within the domain is actually using the most carbon. So as you can see here, this is our demo domain. So as you can see here, it's mainly Drive, Docs, and Sheets. Very little admin, quite a lot of meets, very few calendars. And then you can look at it based on which applications and do it. So, and it'll tell you, so it's basically giving you an indication of the number of devices and the number of services that you're using. And it says here, you should expect these to change as the methodology of data sources improves. So it's brand new. So it's not, what they're basically saying there, in my opinion, is it's not 100% accurate, but it gives you a good idea.
It's really interesting. I suppose a question to the colleagues attending: would that be useful information? Is that useful information? Is that linking into corporate social responsibility? Do you have a sustainability agenda? I think the statistic is 76% of all carbon emissions through the process and the cycle of hardware, as an example, is actually creation. So when you buy a new device, 76% of it when it was actually built, rather than obviously maintaining it. But I'm interested to know what colleagues think of it, and whether because Google must have done a lot of research and whether they felt it was useful, but do we think it's useful on the call?
I think it might be useful to actually publicize, make public what your carbon footprint for Google actually is. So that, if people are sort of like saying, well, why are you doing this or why are you doing that? Well, we're using Chromebooks and we're using the Google Cloud infrastructure because it is actually reducing our carbon footprint, and you can actually make it public that your carbon footprint is this.
I suppose the challenge there is how would you compare it if it's not available for competitors, organisations? So, for example, how would you compare a grammar school that Andy runs or a college that Jason runs compared to a Microsoft or an organisation that is potentially using different mechanisms and their data footprint and everything else? I guess that's the challenge, isn't it? Because it's not public information unless you have access to all of it. But Andy, Jason, Paul, what do we think? Do we think it's going to be useful? Like, can you think of a use case or any examples?
I've just been looking at it now for hours. Oh, sorry, I had my microphone off.
Did you mute yourself by accident mid-conversation there, Andy? Oh, is that? Don't worry.
I was just saying, I was just quickly having a look at what our report was.
You muted again. Does somebody keep muting Andy to irritate him? Is somebody poking the bear here on this call?
I'm just going to click the microphone on rather than press the button space bar. I was using the space bar then, it kept going off. But anyway, no, I think the whole carbon footprint and the carbon agenda from our school is not on the forefront of the senior leadership team. Having had an inspection week before last, that was very much it, and I think it's probably one of those areas that they would like to look at, but it's a desirable rather than essential at the moment. I think they're bigger fish to fry with the things that they've got going to do with compliance and pupil behaviour and parental engagement and all those other things. It might be worth, I've got a slot with the leadership team next week, just popping out a couple of reports and that and seeing what their feedback is really.
If I may, I'm going to share a slide deck and just go through one or two other things, because it might be useful for you to share this with your senior leadership when you do, because I know you're already committed to Chrome OS, Andy, and you've got quite a number of devices that you've converted to Chrome OS. I don't know whether, and I can't remember, Jason, whether you have, or I'm not sure whether, I know if Paul has either, but it's just winding up now. Come on.
All right, great, thanks. We'll have a look at that.
It's just loading. It's just very slow for some reason. Come on. There we go. And it's got that now. Just giving up a ghost again. Come on. There we go. It's back.
Okay.
Decided and didn't decide. Okay, so this is if you're not aware, this is about Chrome OS Flex, and Steve shared with me last week. Really interesting in terms of the environmental impact of this. I think when I spoke to you about it a month or so ago, Andy, you mentioned this, but just in case people aren't aware, really easy to use. You literally stick Chrome OS Flex on a memory stick. You can run it from the memory stick to check that it actually works before you even install it. So if it doesn't work for whatever reason, you've still got your device afterwards. Once you've got it, you can stick it onto the device and you're happy to go ahead with it. It's easy to install. And there is also now a network deployment, so you don't necessarily have to have hands on every single device in order to get it into your school if you've got lots of old devices that you want to use up. And it works on a whole range of devices, and we'll look at that in a moment. But it gives you all the benefits that a brand new Chromebook would give you. Yeah, there's one or two tiny little exceptions, but it's more or less, it's almost imperceptibly in terms of its differences. So all the 600 plus settings that you've got in the admin panel, you can then apply to those devices that were once a PC or a Mac. It's now a Chrome OS Flex device. You manage them in exactly the same way, and that whole thing about staff being set up, they just go to the device and just log on and they've got access to it. So it's actually, the deployment is quick, all the settings are applied instantly once you've got Chrome and the license on there. So it's a great tool for you to reuse all those old devices that you ordinarily would have gone into a landfill. And this was the bit that when we were talking that kind of jumped straight to Steve's mind, and it's just astonishing just to get your head around it. There's that whole thing about if you go Chrome OS Flex, you know, you've got 100% reduction in waste because that device is now no longer going to a landfill. It's staying where it is for you. And actually, they've estimated that in 2023, over 61 million tons of e-waste would have gone into a landfill. And I love this as an image. 168 Empire States have been saved from a landfill somewhere because people have said, no, we're going to get extra few years out of these devices before we commit to new devices, because the use, you know, as long as the device has got a reasonable amount of memory and stuff, it will work within it's seconds slower on login. But once you're in it, a user wouldn't notice a difference. So it's a really has a real impact, I think, in terms of your fleet. So that really struck home, and that whole thing that the most sustainable device is the one that you already own, because like Steve said, you know, 70% of the impact in terms of carbon footprint is on the manufacture of a new device. So the device has already been made, that's already been and gone. So you're extending its impact or ameliorating its impact by spreading it out over many more years using Chrome OS, which I think is really important to think about. And you could share that with your staff, your senior leadership when you speak to them. Over 400 devices currently are able, not necessarily it's personal for you lot, but it might be if you've got one of these kind of touch screen things at your door for people to sign in. If that's you can manage that through a Chrome solution now, so you could use it for those as well. But there are hundreds. It's not just PCs, it's Macs as well. And clearly, if you're going to try it with a 20-year-old device, I suspect it might not work. But you know, devices less than 10 years, you know, you can go and see the list, and they're all published there. I'll make sure you get the list afterwards, so you can look if your devices are on that list, and you can do it. If you haven't tried it yet, yes, James, do you want to say something?
I was just going to say, even if it's not on the list, it's always worth trying it, because it may not be on the list because nobody's tried it on a specific device. Like you say, if it's 20 years old, it probably isn't going to work. But you know, even if it's not on the list and you know it's like 7-8 years old, try it, and 99.9% of the time it will work.
Yeah, excellent. Thanks, Andy. And thanks, James. Andy?
Yeah, I think just echoing your sentiments really on Chrome OS Flex. For us, it was a game changer a year ago in terms of immersing people into Chromebooks really, and just moving them off their beloved Windows PC without them really noticing. It was a transparent shift of purely just saying to people, would you like a bigger monitor? In our case, we did get rid of the older equipment, but we replaced it with refurbished Dell all-in-ones, which are a 24-inch screen. So I think that those claims about the sustainability are good if you keep in your current equipment, but there's going to be a time lag in terms of that. At some point, you will have to upgrade. But whilst you're still got that repurposed equipment, obviously you're going to be not sending that stuff to a landfill or redeploying it somewhere else. But it certainly got everybody off Windows and got them to a single Google sign-on and using the all Google Workspace tools in one place without any complications at all. It was just so seamless. It was unbelievable. And I put that out in all of our classrooms and all our office admin areas, apart from those people, a small handful, for example, in the finance office who use Sage Accounting and Sage Payroll. So the next thing really is managing their Windows devices, like Roger Nixon went through at the summer Google event of managing those in your domain as well. So you've got a single sign-on with Google on a Windows device.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah,
definitely. Just on that one. Sorry, Paul. Great point, Andy. I think I was speaking to a multi-academy trust on Friday. Great conversations. Their CFO and their director of IT were both in the meeting. It was an event, and the CFO came to me and said, "We have a need because of the Windows 11 refresh, and it's going to cost us 700 around £50,000 to refresh all of our devices in terms of the need. And I said, brilliant. Okay, how are you going to do that? And the IT manager said, I'm currently writing a strategy. And I said, well, you better write it pretty quick. And I said, well, what about Chrome OS Flex? And he talked about it and he said, no, I don't think we're going to do that. And I said, brilliant. So I said to the chief financial officer and then the CEO, and I said, brilliant. So you've got the £750,000 and that you're happy with that strategy? And they were saying, absolutely not. So I said, well, there's a conflict here. If you haven't got the money, there is no way you can do the refresh and the rollout and have access to the same number of devices other than flexing those devices. It's not possible. If you haven't got the money and you're in deficit, how could you even ever do that? So the IT manager said, well, I'll try and come up with some solutions. I said, unless you've got magic wand, it's not possible. If you haven't got £750,000 and you've got 300, then you can only spend 300. You know, that's public money, and that's just the way it works. And we talked about a refresh cycle. So just working with them, I spoke to them yesterday, looking at their refresh cycle. And I said, why don't you just prolong it by a year or two? If you can invest the £300,000 next year, and then a further 300 the year after, and then to spread it out across 3 years, why wouldn't you do that? Invest it in Chrome OS Flex. And I don't know if everybody knows on the call, and to anybody that'll get the recording after, if you buy a Chrome OS Flex license or a CU to manage that license, within a year, if you then move that onto a Chromebook, you can then take that license and apply it to a brand new Chromebook. It's not something that's really shared because businesses want to, but we are sharing that. The fact is, in the next 12, if you buy one, within 12 months, come back to us if the Chromebooks are then from us, and we'll move you forward and we'll help you deprovision and enroll a CU license to a new Chromebook. And Google allow that to happen. It's not behind the scenes. It's not underhand. That is 100% what you can do with, and it just prolongs a year or two those licenses to make sure that you can get bang for your buck and make your refresh cycle and your investment go further, because schools are struggling and budgets aren't there. And if it's forcing you into a deficit budget, then there's a concern there. You can't continue to maintain a deficit budget for longer than a period of time. Otherwise, let's be honest, heads will roll. That's just the way it is in business. And education as well. So I just want to share that it's an opportunity, and an average price of a laptop, you can get between 15 and 20 flex devices for exactly the same cost. Consider it in that way, it's one rather than 15 or 20. You know, let's be honest, we know which, if they're signing into the cloud anyway, might as well just sign into a cloud device that's been flexed, and reach out to Chris and everybody else who will support you through that process.
I was going to say, I've got that slide deck, Andy, so I'll send it out. When I send out the updates on Thursday evening, I'll make sure that is included, so you'll have all the details on that as well.
Yeah, that'll be great. No, just echoing Steve's point, I think that sort of model of 15 to 20 Chrome OS Flex devices for the cost of a new PC, is a good model to use. When you're really talking to people about being able to prioritize their expenditure. And I think for scalability for larger institutions, when you're having that conversation, then obviously the scales are much bigger. So if you have got an institution where they've got devices in the thousands, and you're talking about them doing a wholesale upgrade of upgrading devices just because it's Windows 11 compliant, whereas in reality they can retain the hardware they've got, switch over to Chrome OS Flex, even if it's only on 60-70% of their devices. There's a huge saving there potentially of when they have to make that investment, and it's that seamless transition to then immersing them within a totally Google environment.
Yeah, and
that's where the benefits come in doing that, really. I think. Yeah,
so there's education organisations like Andy's, like Jason's at RNN and Midsummer Norton, and plenty of organisations in terms of education context. But there's also enterprise and business context. This is not something that's only for education and people can go. It don't get used in real life. Nordic Hotel Group did it. They got a ransomware attack and shifted within 2 days all of their estate to Chrome, and then they changed all of their model and started to buy Chrome devices at source. But also on that, the recent example that's not been published yet is NatWest Banking Group. They've moved 30,000 endpoint machines to Chrome using Chrome Flex managed by one individual. So when people think that we've got small IT teams in education, NatWest Bank apparently have only got one guy looking after it, and I was like, wow, they need to maybe invest a little bit more in their IT team. But I think there'll probably be one of 200 people that have individual focuses rather than spread across doing everything across the IT suite. But I just want to share that it's education and enterprise. It's massive across. And the latest stat that I found out on Friday was outside of the US, the UK is #1 for Flex devices globally now, as of this year, as of the last couple of weeks. So it's seen a massive impact. That's probably due to the fact that the state of the UK and specifically England in regards to budgets and inflation and everything else, and a realization of how much money we've actually got to spend in IT budgets across the education sector. But I'll leave it at that.
That's right. I mean, from ours on a very small number, it allowed us to prioritise our investment. So we could invest in terms of flat display panels, Promethean panels that we put in, which you can't really redeploy old devices, but it allowed us to concentrate on investing the cash where we needed to in those devices on a classroom and a back office refresh, but still achieve the benefits of migrating to a safer, secure, more modern operating system. Certainly, speak very highly of it, and I'm a bit happy to help anybody with that.
Andy, also good to hear that Google fixed the 119 mirroring issue for you. So
that's old tickety boo now here.
Brilliant. Whilst we were talking, because I've still been thinking about the whole thing about sustainability, and I'll come back to this slide, which is the one about the Empire State Building. Bottom left-hand corner, it talked about a large deployment of old devices to Chrome Flex. I think, well, that's not necessarily going to work for an ordinary school. So I thought, if you even just take it down to 100 devices, in a year, that's the equivalent to 8 cars off the road. The CO2 emissions off the road. And that's a really substantial thing, and so powering a house for very nearly half of a year, an average household for half a year. So even relative small deployments for schools, if they're just going to start small to experiment with the efficacy of these devices and how will they fit in with their larger fleet of devices, they're already making an impact, which we've got to get our heads around, haven't we? It's really important. Of course, there's all sorts of benefits in terms of the ease of management, and 30,000 devices managed by a single person. That's an incredible, statistic, isn't it? But actually, we've got to always keep our mind on that impact on the world, whether it's our recycling or whether it's the way that we use our devices. And if we just extend their use just by a couple of years, those tiny little steps will all begin to make a difference, bit by bit. And I think that's really quite powerful. Steve's already mentioned that, and we've got links to a case study, one from Andy and one from Midsummer Norton, about how they adopted Chrome Flex. And big thanks to Andy for helping us with that. It's really interesting. Definitely pleased to go and have a read of those. And one other thing about Chrome OS that I think Google don't shout about enough, I think they're beginning to start to be doing it now, is there's been no reported ransomware attacks got to the end user in Chrome OS ever. Not almost never or hardly any, but I think that's just a huge statistic. It's just astonishing that they can claim that. So you are dealing with the most secure. So you got all the environmental benefits that we're saving the planet little bit by bit. You got a really secure system. It's easy to use, and the whole process of generating them, creating them into a brand new Chrome Flex device is also relatively easy to use. So did you use the network deployment for yours, Andy?
No, I didn't actually. I just did it with a pen drive, thumbstick, USB.
But it's quick to do still, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I just put, a little workshop going with 3 or 4 devices at once, and by the time you popped it in and set the image running, and then done it on the second one, by the time it had run and then you enrolled it and put it in the OU and done that, the other one had finished. So it was just, probably 10 or 15 minutes each one, which is not a great deal, but obviously if you're at NatWest and you've got 30,000 to do, you do it.
And hopefully they'll be doing network deployment.
Yeah, you do it on a network deployment. I must try it actually sometime and just get my head around how that works. I've not tried it, and I don't know anybody who's done that.
Yeah. James, you want to say something?
Yeah, I just want to say that you're missing a slide there, Paul. And the slide that you're missing is that you should have had a comparison of the number of ransomware attacks on Chrome OS versus the number of ransomware attacks that happen through Windows machines.
Yeah.
We also have access to all of that information and the percentage reduction. If anybody else wants to see that information, we have a full slide deck in regards to the security of Chrome versus a Microsoft environment and different OSs. So we can share that if anybody's interested. Reach out to the team and we can share that across. We don't like to do always direct comparisons, but we're more than happy to provide you with the ammunition of some of the conversations and hard conversations that you go into as organisations. Of course, that's what we're here to do. There'll be lots of myths, fears, and misunderstandings. Through no fault of always IT teams are different. It's just the fact that a lot of those people don't understand what they don't understand. We all grew up in a Microsoft environment because that was the only thing really that existed. And what I say, especially for education, is we are working in a learning environment, so we need to be the first people that are open to lifelong learning. If not, we're not willing to change and learn something new, and potentially, let's be honest, we're probably in the wrong job. But yeah, I do need to drop, but I'll share the slides across with you, Chris, and you can share that across. There's only maybe 3 or 4 that can help. I do have to drop. I appreciate everybody's time and everything else, and thanks for seeing everybody. If you need anything, reach out as always, and I might see you before Christmas, but if not, have a great one when it comes, everybody, okay?
Yeah. Just before you go, Steve, I think it really is a compelling argument on that and a good discussion. I think that coupled with the presentation that Ollie Trussell did at the Google Summer event about the interoperability of using things like Outlook and all of that, about how you can receive emails in there and on some machines in an OU, or you can receive it in Google, in Gmail. That was a brilliant presentation by his, and I think that is such a compelling argument. If you took that coupled with Chrome OS Flex and the cost benefits of it into any organisation, they'd be very hard pushed to consider purchasing new hardware.
Yes,
not for Windows.
I agree. I think that's probably any sane argument, let's say, or any qualified argument rather than just somebody's interpretation or preference. But yeah. Not to worry. But yeah, appreciate that. I'll share everything I've got.
Right.
We've got some battle cards and stuff like that. But I think it's we'll be in that position, and we'll keep sharing stuff across. And if you need anything to support you in conversations in any organisation, to anybody that's on the call, reach out to us. We can support you in either conversations with your leadership. More than happy to join any of those conversations. We can get you down to Google at certain points as well. Hopefully, I'll see people at BET this year if anybody's attending. If not, I'll if I don't see you through the week, I'll see you through the window, and I'll have a good one, and I'll see you soon.
Cheers, Dave.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye.
So one last thing from me. I don't know where you're at, Paul. If you need a zap that, you can actually request a Chrome OS Flex software on a little dongle. Comes in a nice little box for you if you want to zap that before you go. I don't know if you're using Chrome OS Flex or not. So I know Andy is, so he won't need it, but I'll leave it there for you should you need it.
Game changer, I think, the headline.
Yeah. Brilliant. Excellent. And then speak to Chris, Paul, if you're ready to move, because of course the Chrome OS is free, of course, but if you want to manage it, as I said, of course, got to think about a CEU license to manage that. But compared to a new device, that's a fraction of the cost, like Steve said. So talk to Chris, he'll sort you out. Excellent. Anything else? Anything else from anyone else? Any other questions about anything generally?
No. How are people generally getting on with the third-party access and apps and all that good stuff on under 18s? Everybody okay with that after the initial sort of brick wall that some people experienced?
Those kind of messages are more likely to come through to James just as better, but it looks like it might have just gone onto a call. I don't know. Have you been going through that, Paul? Are you on the admin panel, access to the admin panel?
Is Paul still there?
I'm not sure. Only had a couple to sort out.
Oh,
Actually, Andy, I can ask you. I've just read with add-ons. Do you have to approve and verify those as well?
Yeah.
So it's not going to be anything, any kind of app, whether it's extension, add-on, or a progressive web app or whatever. It's all needed. Okay.
Yeah, you authorise them for each OU effectively, so you can do it at the top level or wherever, and you authorize those permissions and do the same acceptance for Workspace. Those apps throughout, really.
It's the way it should be, though, Andy. It's the way it should be. Admins should always have eyes on. Always have eyes on as to what apps are being installed, which add-ons are being installed, and to whom they are being installed for. And it should be an administrative task, not a free-for-all, as I say. And the reason that they've brought in the sort of the approval process is rooted in sort of like the legalities of all stemming from GDPR and things like that, is that you need to actually say, well, this third-party app is suitable for my students who are under 18.
Yeah, I think you extend that argument to really saying it. You've got to make sure it's suitable for your organisation.
Yeah.
And that's not a decision that an individual or classroom teacher or somebody somewhere can make on behalf of their students. You have a look at, for example, Pinterest. Our art teacher was like, "Oh, Pinterest is great. We've got loads of really good art examples on there," and it's having a conversation with them. You do some research and have a look at their privacy policy and their suggested age. It's an over 18 app. Yeah. So it might have some really good art stuff on, but it's also got a lot of porn on. Yep. So just to be looking at that singly in that mindset, you've got to make sure what we've done is really set that up so that everybody is under 18. So teachers can't really add in any apps for themselves to use. So they can't authorize anything for themselves unless they put a request through, and then we check out against the GDPR requirements of that privacy for that particular app, and then have a look at the considerations for whether that's approved for staff or students as well. Yeah, so it's been a good learning experience overall.
Andy, to do with it might take a little bit more time to actually do what we call the DPIA, data protection impact assessment, but it's also safeguarding as well.
Yeah.
So actually, the amount of time that you might have to take to actually look at, like you say, the privacy settings, and Pinterest can have, it can have some great works of art on there, but someone might put up a nice pornographic image and say that's art.
Yeah.
And Pinterest will let it through.
Yeah, it promotes some good conversations about what's okay and what's not okay in terms of app usage and safeguarding within school.
Yeah.
So I welcome it. I think it was initially a bit of a brick wall, but I think it's been a useful aid to the whole organisation and to admins really, and to staff once they understand it and you have that conversation with them.
Yeah, and Paul's just put a link in there to artsandculture.google.com. If your art teacher needs any sort of like educational sort of like art information, go there, turn that on, let them use those, because that's an absolutely fantastic resource.
Yeah.
When it comes to sort of like art and culture, but it does.
There is, of course, still newsy in there, and stuff that you might consider immediately. I don't know how well you know Rodin. People know the thinker, but some of his female nudes, I think, are in positions that are not very school friendly, shall we say? Still classed as art technically, but they're all a bit near the knuckle, and I'm not sure people are aware of those. They're in his museum in Paris. I was shocked. I didn't know it until I got there. Blimey! So so there's still stuff in there that you've got to curate it as an educator, but it's much easier to access.
Yeah.
The next thing you know, you'll be criticizing Michelangelo's David.
Oh no, I'm not criticizing it. I'm just alerting people to it. I was really quite shocked by how graphic some of the pictures he had his models in for him to make his little maquettes. So
right, I'm going to stop the recording at that point.
That's all perfectly innocent.